This video is about the ASCA Academy. The Academy is the only training that I know for consulting that happens on a regular basis. So you might have some consulting related events in your local chapter, but they're not going to happen year after year. This one happens every year in February. I went twice. The first time was 2015 before I did any consulting. And then I went again this year. I'm gonna cover what the Academy is, what the costs would be like, and whether it's like who is it for, whether it's worth going, and then some tips. I want this video to have more longevity, so it doesn't help to compare the instructors and the coaches, their teaching style, stuff like that, because those are the people that change, whereas the curriculum tends to stay a little bit similar. So what is the Consulting Academy? From the website, it says that it is the only conference where you can learn the essentials of being a successful consulting arborist and start the process to become a registered consulting arborist. That's the RCA, and that's a level of membership within the organization. It's a multi-day training where you learn and interact with leading experts. You form relationships with the people who are there that you continue on after the academy's done. My opinion is that it's not a how-to academy. It kind of sounds like that. To me, it's like a high-level overview / framework of consulting. And there's a heavy emphasis on legal aspects, litigation specifically, because that's where you have to be the most careful. And then you can adapt that information down to your standard homeowner visit or something like that. If you compare it to track, it's like teaching you a framework for consulting and a really good overview, but it doesn't actually teach you the consulting itself, the practice of it. Just like track just teaches you this framework that you can apply your knowledge within. It also does not teach you how to write. It teaches you elements of a successful or a comprehensive arborist report, how to construct one, where you put certain information, what kind of information you might include, but it is not going to teach you how to write. I think that is a misconception that people have. So when you get there, you may be disappointed if you have that. Who should go? If you want to be an RCA, you have to go because this is the first step to completing that process. Then if you are someone who does consulting in any kind, talking to homeowners as a sales arborist, for example, and you want to explore this further, or you want to develop more of a framework and have some other thoughts about how you do that consulting, this would also work. Or if you want to just network and meet other people who also have a similar interest, including the coaches. Next, the costs. There are multiple tiers. So you could be a member of ASCA, you could be a member of a organization like your local chapter if they're co-sponsoring the event, and then you can be a non-member. And then within these, I believe there's an early bird discount. For the ASCA member early bird, the Academy is $1,875. Assuming that you stay at the same hotel, flight from California, 5 meals that aren't included in the conference, and if you have to buy books, not including shipping, it came out to about $3,700. Then if you're not a member, then the Academy fee can be as high as $2,400. And then filter all that other stuff down, then maybe you're looking at $4,300 for the entire event. Of course, this differs depending on the kinds of meals you eat, where you're flying in from, what kind of hotel you stay at, etc. On to the Academy overview. There's multiple parts to the Academy. There's stuff that you do at home before and after the Academy. Then there's the stuff at the Academy, and then there's a test. So in chronological order-ish, you start with the pre-Academy homework. They send you links to videos about different subjects like contracts, insurance, starting a consulting business. There's articles about forensics. There's a pre-Academy report that you're supposed to write. So they give you a prompt, a scenario, and you write a report to address that scenario using the ASCA booklet report format. And what will happen during the academy is that you'll get paired with a coach, and that person will review your report against a rubric that's based on the ASCA Academy standards. And then you discuss it. So you talk about your writing. At that time, you're also expected to buy books. I only have 2 of them. I don't know where my last one went, but there's this Guide to Professional Consulting Practice, and then this Writing Effective Reports, and then there's a book of sample reports. Then you have 4 classroom modules, which are the standards of professional practice, forensics, report writing, and legal aspects of consulting. And I'll talk about those a little bit more later. During the academy, you get the one-on-one coaching. There's networking. That happened at the very beginning, and I think that was a good icebreaker or warm-up for networking for the rest of the event. Then there's also Q&As. One was optional, one was mandatory, and that's where you could ask everyone, which includes the instructors and the coaches. You can ask them questions that you didn't get to ask before. There's a open book test. You have to get 80%. You can bring in any of your books, your notebooks, things like that. They said that you could retake the test for a fee, but that's only one time. Otherwise, you have to redo the academy again. If you pass that exam during the academy, then you get a post-academy report, and that one is actually graded as well. You have to pass those components in order to officially graduate the academy. The good thing about that post-academy report is that there's actually a deadline. It's about 2 months after you leave the academy. You want to make sure that you get it done and you pass, because in the future, if you decide to be an RCA or something like that, you've already completed that academy portion. Next, the classroom lectures or modules. There's 4 of them, and I'll just go through them real quick with my very hopefully quick thoughts. So number 1, standards of professional practice. This is described as a session that explores setting up a consulting practice, the role of consulting arborists, and how consultants should perform their duties. And that's based on this book and ASCA's standards of professional practice, which they send to you before the academy. Based on the description, it sounds a lot more like a how-to, but again, it really isn't. It's just a big picture overview. It follows the standards of professional practice first, which makes sense because that's what the title is called. But those standards first talk about ethics, and to me, it feels a little bit weird that you would introduce an academy by first talking about ethics when the attendees may not necessarily even know what consulting is yet. If you've read this and you've read the standards, it kind of just follows that. The next session is forensics, which is an introduction to the field of forensic science, how it applies to consulting, what tools you use, how you conduct a forensic investigation, how you analyze data from that evidence. The nature of a lot of forensics is that it's based in legal work, litigation, cases, things like that. It will have a very, very heavy legal vibe. What I liked was that there was a section that talked about the scientific method, and that level or that thought process or approach would be really helpful for just about anyone. They also give you this really really detailed article called Forensics in Arboriculture, and it was written by my coach Russ Carlson. He used to teach this section for a long time. So yeah, the content that they give you is good. You just get to kind of rehear it during the sessions and get to ask questions about it. Then the next module or session was report writing, and it's described as a session that focuses on the writing skills necessary for successfully constructing reports that meet ASCA's report writing requirements. It defines the proper structural elements, blah, blah, blah. The components required to develop reports that are easy to read and usable. This is a situation where the marketing might throw people off because it says it focuses on writing skills. I don't believe that. I think it focuses on the components that you would need to put into your report to make it functional and usable where you put certain information that you've gathered, or your analysis, your thoughts, opinions, and so on, but it does not teach writing skills. If you've barely written and you don't remember anything from English classes that you've taken in the past, you'll get some stuff out of it, but just don't go in with the expectation that your writing skills will improve as a result. At the beginning of this session, they did emphasize that they're teaching to the test. And so they teach this booklet style format. I will be honest, I have always been a hater of the ASCA report, the booklet format. I did it for this academy and I just never did it again. But I came to appreciate during this academy that if you ever get involved in litigation work, you do want to make sure that you've hit all these points, like, any repetition that you might have to do to tell a consistent story from the beginning of your report to the end. That's all much more necessary when you have something that's high profile like that versus my standard arborist report for a homeowner just saying what's going on with their trees. It doesn't need that level. So now I appreciate that if you properly learn the ASCA format, then you can again reduce it or simplify it down to whatever it is that you need for a simpler project. I found this session to be the least helpful, but that's because I'm a pretty good writer. I've written tons of reports, and I mainly took notes on some ideas I had about how I would adjust my reports, and I did get some nifty tips from the videos that they provided ahead of time. And the last session was legal aspects of consulting. It introduces you to issues of law that arise in consulting practice. I thought that this was the most helpful section for me, in part because the speaker was James Coleman. James is a friend. He's a really great speaker. He's really good at teaching, and that's all reflected in this session. His session was the most fresh compared to the other ones because the other three had content that was already in the pre-academy materials and in the books. Whereas the legal section, it didn't replicate any information that was in the previous materials. Is it worth it? Obviously I can't answer that for you because every situation is different, but here are some things that you could think about. If your company is paying for it, then yeah, no cost to you. If you want to pursue consulting or the RCA, also a yes. If you're already interested in it and you know someone who is going in this specific year, then go, because the experience is so much better already knowing someone. It could be someone that you just touch base with during the 3 days, and you can talk to them about stuff that you're not sure about. You could talk to them about how the experience is going. It takes some of the stress off networking because worst case scenario, you guys can just hang out. My maybes, if you only get so much budget to spend on education for the year, I think the ASCA conference is actually more helpful. You meet consulting arborists that have a lot of experience, and I think that your chances of finding a mentor, your chances of meeting people in your area who already have experience, getting to listen to talks that deepen your consulting career, that makes the conference more valuable. But it would be worth going to the academy at some point. Again, maybe if you don't have time to do the pre-academy work and to study during the conference and to do the report afterwards, it probably is not a good time because of how expensive it is. I heard that people were waiting till the last minute to finish their reports. The coach is going to review a report of yours that is not your best effort. So it doesn't really tell you exactly what your potential is and where you need to work on. It can call out stuff that you would have fixed if you had more time. And the last maybe/no is if you're not open-minded, if you have these preconceived ideas of what consulting is or what the academy is, and you have a very specific goal, like I'm going to come out of it being a better writer, I'm going to come out of it being a better consultant. I think that if you cannot be flexible with those expectations, then you're going to be disappointed and it may not be worth it. Next, I have a bunch of tips. They're not going to be in order. So 1, Academy sells out quickly. I think they said this year it sold out within 2 weeks of it opening up. So if you actually want to go, make sure you sign up really quickly. Number 2, if you need to save money, this is the event where you may want to stay off site. The days are long. Some of them were 10 to 12 hour days. And at the end of that, especially if you have the test to study for, or if you have some work that you have to catch up on, you may not want to spend the money to stay at that hotel to maximize your networking experience. We flew in on Monday, and it wasn't until Friday that we actually saw the sun again. So that just gives you an idea of what the event actually is like. If you can afford it though, stay at the hotel, because you're gonna continue to run into people from the event. If you eat at the restaurant/bar that's in the hotels, usually you'll run into other attendees or the coaches who are staying in the same place, and there might be more opportunities to network and talk to them. Number 3, if you qualify for membership, sign up for membership for the year that you're going to the academy. If you compare the savings that you get as a member compared to a non-member, it's basically enough to justify the price of the membership, which is $550 a year. Then if you have the funds for it, you can also go to the conference in the same year and take advantage of the membership discount for the conference. You also get to preview some of the other offers of membership, like participating in their ambassador program, being able to join the forum, getting access to the free webinars and stuff like that. And that can help you decide as to whether membership is worth it. Number 4, if you don't have a time frame as to when you need to do the academy, pick one that's closer to you geographically so that the time change isn't so significant. I had a 3-hour difference on mine, and having to be up and eating breakfast at 4:30 a.m. my time was rough. I don't get up that early. I don't eat that early, and that just leaks into the rest of the academy where you're not going to be as focused or anything like that. Number 5, figure out a priority for your experience. Are you there to learn as much as possible from the academy itself? Are you perhaps more interested in networking? That's where I would suggest doing as much of your work ahead of time as possible. That also means that you might stay longer at the venue to meet people and talk to people, go out to dinner, stuff like that. These are all things that take up time that you could spend studying. Number 6, I'm just gonna call it 6. Even if your priority is not necessarily studying or networking, preview or learn the materials from the pre-academy homework beforehand in case your instructors are not as good as you would like them to be, or if their teaching style just doesn't match yours. Then you already have some of that information stored away. At this point, I forgot what point I'm at. So keep in mind this mindset or this lens that the instructors and the coaches are teaching to the ASCA format. They're teaching to a high level, litigation level curriculum. Although they will make a disclaimer that perhaps they do mostly litigation work, you really have to put in the effort to adapt what they're saying into the level of consulting that you're currently doing. And you should not be turned off by that idea that if you don't want to take on legal cases, that consulting is not for you. For a lot of arborist consultants, depending on where you are, the majority of the work is construction, development projects, but they barely touched upon that. And the coaches, some of them were 90% construction work, but that part of the work doesn't show up in the academy. Another thing about mindset is whatever mindset you have going in, I think you're gonna find evidence to support it. So if you have a negative mindset, like ASCA is, a closed off group, it's really hard to break into consulting. I'm not gonna learn anything from this academy because someone told me it wasn't very good. You're gonna find reasons to support those things. So I think it's important to have a more open mind For me, it was my second time going. I just kept an open mind that I would learn something, whatever it was. And, that perception was confirmed. The open mindset also applies to networking. There's always something to be learned from different people. There are people who have also consulted for a long time and just haven't gone through the academy yet. Whenever there's an opportunity to talk to someone, I think it's really important to take them up on their offer. So the coaches, instructors, ambassadors will say, reach out to me anytime. And they do mean that. I have a vague idea of what the instructors and the coaches are paid. Let's just say it is like essentially volunteer work. So they are doing this because they actually want to, not because it's a lucrative opportunity. Was it worth it for me to go again? It was worth it enough. And there were a couple of different reasons. So I mentioned mindset multiple times. I got this idea from ASCA Forum, I think. I saw a couple of people post that they had been to Academy more than once. And that thought never occurred to me before. But I thought, okay, the person I am now versus 11 years ago when I went the first time is very different. Since then, I have 11 years of consulting experience, and I have a much larger framework which I could hang on new information. So back then, anything business related, I would not have been able to absorb. Any litigation, none of that. I wouldn't have been able to hang on to that information because I just didn't know enough. So I did pick up more different things this time. I did watch the videos, including the writing ones, which they weren't available in the past. And I would say not every video was helpful to me, but I got information, at least one piece of information from all of them. As an example, there was some stuff about formatting reports in Word. I don't really need help with that, but I watched them and I learned like 3 tips, and that was worth it because my workflow is now more efficient having seen those videos. Something I didn't expect was that my coach offered to review one of my client reports. So I sent one to him, and it wasn't in the ASCA format, but I sent him this report that I will talk about on this channel at some point. But he had a whole bunch of comments for me, and I thought that was really cool. A lot of comments and questions, things I didn't necessarily think about too much. So it was nice that I actually got someone to look at something that I was frankly pretty proud of. And I wouldn't say he was tearing it apart, but he had good notes for me. And it was nice to have that at this stage in my career. I also know a bunch of people who are going. One of the instructors, 3 or 4 of the coaches, and 2 other people, attendees, including my friend who's already a RCA. Knowing that I would know all these people and that I would just have fun during the academy was a big part of why I wanted to go. And my last reason was that I had considered signing up to be a coach, but it'd been so long since I'd been that I didn't know what a coach's responsibilities would be like. I wanted to see what it was like without that pressure. I only had 1 or 2 of those reasons. I would be less inclined to go, and I would not go again. I don't think I'm going to get anything more from it that I couldn't get from other sources at this point. I really feel that when I took the academy in 2015, as someone who hadn't done any consulting before, it set me up for a better learning experience. But the academy itself did not make me a successful consultant. It was the training that I had afterwards under both my boss and another mentor. If it hadn't been for them, I think the path to becoming a consulting arborist would be much harder. But because I had taken academy and I had this framework, it made it so much easier for my boss to train me into a good consultant.